Thank you for joining us on how to e-file your 1099s with Rentec and Nelco. I am Jason Jennison. I am the partner relationship manager here at Nelco. So if you guys have never heard of Nelco before, here at Nelco, we think about 1099 reporting year round. You guys probably start thinking about 1099 reporting maybe now, maybe it's a little bit early for you. Sometimes people wait a little bit longer. Here at Nelco, we are constantly thinking about how we can make our 1099 reporting better. We're always trying to make sure that our um, systems are easy to use, make sure they're compliant with any IRS regulations, and also always trying to make sure that they are working correctly with our partner software. In the case of our case here, we are partnering with Rentec software, and let me tell you, Rentec has been a fantastic partner of Nelco's. They are constantly working with us to make sure that our systems are working correctly. They complete annual testing to ensure that all of our systems are working well. And I can also tell that Rentec really cares about their users and their user success. So specifically today, we are talking about how we work together to make sure that you guys have the easiest 1099 filing experience possible. So that's a little bit about me. Let's take a look at our agenda. We already did our introduction. We'll move through the eFile threshold requirement. There is a pretty significant change in e-filing or in 1099 e-filing this year. We got you covered on that. We'll talk through that. We'll talk a little about due dates and penalties. We'll walk through Nelco's products and services, and then we'll have time at the end for question and answer. If you do have a question that you need to get answered, feel free to put it in the Q&A section of the webinar function, and we will do our best to get them answered. I do have Catherine from Rentec joining us, and she will be assisting with answering any questions that might come in from the Rentec side. So with that, let's go ahead and start talking about some compliance information, because that's what everybody loves to talk about, right? So this year, the IRS is dropping the e-file threshold requirement. And so as you can see on the slide right here, the IRS has released regulations requiring anyone filing 10 or more W-2s or 1099 forms to electronically file. In the past, that number has been 250, and they said if you're filing 249 or less, you could file paper forms. They have always preferred you electronically file, but the IRS is saying this year, if you're filing 10 or more forms, you need to electronically file. That's probably most of you. However, we do have some accommodations for anybody that's filing less. You could file paper forms, but quite frankly, I think when you see how easy the system is, you'll want to electronically file anyway. So also this aggregate rule, it applies for the total number of forms. In the past, those calculations were done separately. This year, if you're filing 5 W-2 forms and 9 1099 forms, you're filing 14 total forms, and so you will need to electronically file all of your forms if you're filing more than 10 total forms. So it's a little bit about W-2s, 1099s. We'll only work with Rentec on 1099s. So we just wanted to make sure you guys knew that the W-2s are included in that form count when you're looking to electronically file. So whoever is doing the payroll for your company also needs to make sure that they need to electronically file as well. Here's a few additional provisions. Partnerships with more than 100 partners must electronically file no matter what, regardless of how many forms they're filing. Corrections must be filed in the same manner that the originals are filed. So please make sure that you electronically filing corrections if you are electronically filing the original forms. And then there's a whole list of forms that could be included in the regulation change. I won't go through and belabor that point. Suffice to say there's 1099 series in there, which just includes the 1099 miscellaneous, the 1099 NEC forms. W-2s are probably some other common forms that you guys file. So please make sure to take a look at that list. If there's any forms in there you file, just know they are subject to electronic filing requirements this year. So it was a really brief look at some of the regulations surrounding e-filing. Let's take a quick look at due dates. Now, obviously, we're talking about 1099s today, and this is kind of a big matrix. But suffice to say, if you look at all these dates, the earliest date on here is January 31st. So my suggestion to you guys is to immediately get these done as soon as January starts and get them done as soon as possible. Please, please, please make sure you're getting these done by January 31st. Now, there is some provisions for 1099 miscellaneous where you could wait longer to file it to the IRS. But quite honestly, just take care of it all by January 31st. And again, I won't go through each one of these due dates separately, but please, please file by January 31st all of your forms, and that will ensure that you have the all the due dates met and you don't have any issues getting with the IRS. Now, as we talk about penalties, this is something I just want to talk about just for a second, because what does occasionally happen is somebody has a problem filing, or they forget their filing, and they ask me, should I still file even though I'm late? And the answer is yes. Not only should you file, you should file immediately and as soon as possible, because again, won't go through each one of the bullet points on this slide, but suffice to say that the longer you wait, the more stiff the penalties get. And if you decide not to file at all, you are subject to intentional disregard, which is that bottom bullet point. The penalty is at least $630 per 1099 that you don't file when you knew you had to file and you just chose not to. So if you find yourself after January 31st due date and you have not filed your 1099s, get them done as soon as possible. Get a lot of questions. We'll walk through Nelco system in a second, but commonly get the question after January 31st, can I still file, or is it too late? And the answer is yes, absolutely. You can file. Actually, right now we are still open for 2022 filings, even though we're almost all the way through 2023. So even if you find yourself in the summer, maybe you missed a 1099, our system will be open. Get it done, get it filed as soon as possible, and hopefully the IRS does not levy any fines against you. So before we start taking a look at Nelco services and how it works with Rentec, I wanted to just talk through some of the advantages of using Nelco. Now, many of you um, may use um, a CPA or an accountant to file your 1099s. Um, I would really encourage you to take a strong look at Nelco system and the prices that we use. You could potentially save a lot of money for information that, quite frankly, is already in your Rentec and it's ready to go. So some things about Nelco system is that, number one, it meets all the IRS and state eFile requirements. We can take care of it. We, no matter what, filing to the IRS, filing to individual states, we have you covered there. It's a completely paperless solution. You don't have to print any forms, mail them out to your owners or your 1099 vendors. We'll take care of all of that paperless filing. It also covers all year-end form types, whether you're filing NEC or miscellaneous. We'll take care of that. And again, we'll demonstrate that just in a second. And again, we're going to print, mail, and electronically deliver the recipient copies for you. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Nelco system as it works with Rentec. Now, I'm going to go to a screen that hopefully you're familiar with, which is your Rentec Direct screen. And to get to the 1099 filing, you're going to want to come down here to Settings, down to Utilities, and come to 1099 eFile and Print. Now, if you want more information or costs, you can click on this screen right here and it'll walk through the costs. But we're just going to go ahead and click on 1099 eFile and Print, and it's going to bring up the 1099s that we are going to need to file. Now, in this case, we have two vendors and two owners listed right here. And as you can see, there is some information missing on these individuals. So this is information you will need to complete before you complete the filing for these individuals. Now, in this case, rather than going through that whole process, I'm just going to select the two that are ready to go. But again, you can make those adjustments right here and then continue on with this. For the sake of ease and time here, I'm just going to go click here, continue to next step. And it's going to break down exactly the amounts and the tax IDs of the people that we're going to be filing to. Now, once you click continue to next step, you'll have a little bit of information about 1099s being transmitted to Nelco, and then you're going to click continue to Nelco to initiate eFile. And the first screen you're going to come to is going to be this login screen. Now, if you've never filed with us before, go ahead and click on Create Account, where we will ask you for some really basic information. Basic information like your company name, address, what type of filer you are, city, state, zip, your phone number, and then your email address and password over here are going to be your login to the Nelco system. So make sure it's an email that you have access to and a password that you can remember. So I already have a login, so I'm just going to go ahead and log in with my email address and password. And the first screen you're going to come to in the process is going to be forms in progress. Forms in progress, you will see that we have your company name listed right up here, Management World, and then we have the 1099 form types listed in the blue bar. So as you can see right here, we have a 1099 miscellaneous and a 1099 NEC for two different 1099 recipients. One is Johnson Investments, and the other one is ABS Landscaping, one of my vendors. And then to the right of those names, you will see the check marks. And these check marks are going to indicate exactly the services that we're going to be providing for you. Now, right now I have the bundle checked, which includes all the services. But for federal filing, we are going to go ahead and send these forms to the IRS on your behalf. That's what federal filing indicates. And again, you can see the check marks appear or disappear depending on what services I select. For state filing, as you can see, we're going to send Johnson Investments here to South Carolina and West Virginia. And then for recipient mail and online retrieval, we are going to print and mail the 1099 copies directly out to ABS Landscaping and Johnson Investments. So with that, you have a completely paperless solution. Now you notice that ABS Landscaping doesn't have any states listed down here. ABS Landscaping, we're not indicated that there's any state reporting required for the places where that income was earned. So perhaps they're in a state that doesn't require reporting, or perhaps the information is not in there correctly. If you think that they are in a state that requires reporting, you will need to go back to your Rentec system and check the state ID information to make sure it is there. Now, the other thing you'll notice is that that's the subtotal right here is being adjusted depending on the services that you select. Up here, we have the bundles. One of them has state filing, one of them does not have state filing. Again, check marks appear and disappear. And you'll see as you adjust your services or your payers, you can see the pricing change and recalculate. And so suffice to say, you can come in here, feel free to make any adjustments that you like. You can come in here and see, okay, this is how much it's going to cost me to file my 1099s. If you decide you want to use a different method to file your 1099s, you don't have to pay anything. You can get to this point, change your different service selections, change the 1099s you want to file, and make your decision about whether you want to use Nelco services. Again, we don't charge you anything to create an account and bring your forms in and see how much that cost is going to be. So once this all looks good, you have your proper services selected, you're going to go ahead and click Next. Just 1 second. Now, occasionally when we're filing the states, there is going to be some additional information that we don't have that the states are looking for. So in this case, the state of West Virginia is looking for an IT 103 form. And if there's any information missing, it will be highlighted in red right here. But basically, they're looking for West Virginia income tax reported as withheld during the year. And so in this case, we don't need to make any changes, but if you did need to make changes, again, these boxes will be highlighted in red and there'd be a little box explaining the information that is missing. Go ahead and click Next. Now, your 1099 recipients' email addresses should be listed right here. If they're not, and you want them to receive, in addition to a copy of their printed 1099 in the mail, if you want them to receive an electronic copy emailed to them via link, you can put their email addresses in right here. If you choose not to do that, not a big deal. Your 1099 recipients will just receive a copy via mail on paper. Go ahead and click Next, and you come to Submit Form screen, also known as the cart. From Submit Forms, you can click Preview Forms. That'll just give you a PDF of exactly what the forms are, exactly how they're going to look, exactly the information that we'll be filing on your behalf. A summary report is kind of like a 1096 form, Very common question I get is whether we file a 1096 form, and you don't need to file a 1096 form if you're electronically filing. In fact, the IRS doesn't accept the 1096 form if you're electronically filing. But the summary report kind of summarizes all the data, and it gives you the opportunity to match that against your records. And the detail report is just a CSV Excel document that we don't go into. It just has all the information from the forms listed in a grid format. So if all this looks correct, you can go ahead and click next, and this will bring you to the payment screen. Again, if you've never filed with us before, you can click add a card, put in your credit card information, and that will allow you to check out easy and fast. If you don't have a credit card or you need some other alternate form of payment, go ahead and give Nelco a call. We can give you what's called a prepaid filing code. Prepaid filing code is like a 17-digit code that works just like a gift card. You put money on there, we'll mark it on there, we'll give you the gift card, and we can invoice you or do whatever you need to do to get the funds on to the code, and you click apply code and it deducts funds off of that code. Pretty straightforward process, but it's a lot easier just to put in your credit card, frankly, and get that done before or when you're filing as opposed to getting the prepaid code. But we do have alternate payment methods available if you need them. Before we click pay and submit, I just want to caution you that pay and submit is kind of the point of no return. And so, as I mentioned before, this is in a very truncated time frame. Basically, we have the month of January to get all these forms filed and done. And so we are in a really tight window. Once you click pay and submit, we start working on this filing immediately. We start printing and mailing them out to recipients. We start electronically filing them to the IRS or any states. And so clicking pay and submit, once you do that, the only recourse to correct those forms is to do a correction. We can't stop them once you click pay and submit. So please make sure that pay and submit, before you click pay and submit button, everything is good and all the information is correct to the best of your knowledge. We're going to go ahead and click pay and submit. And just like that, we are done. We've taken care of everything for you. We're going to e-file these forms to the IRS. We're going to e-file them to South Carolina and West Virginia. We're going to mail forms to the recipients. We're going to post them on online retrieval. That was the email function we were talking about before. We make these copies available to you on PDF. And then we also have that summary report available. Now, I would highly recommend getting PDFs at this point, just by clicking print forms, and we'll walk you through it. So just having those PDFs, saving them somewhere, either printing them, putting them in a folder for record keeping, or saving a PDF somewhere on your computer for later record keeping. You can also print this page or print receipt from this screen. And the other thing I was going to say is once you complete the filing, you are going to be also getting an email address, which whatever email address you logged in with, and it will say thank you for using 1099 eFile. And it'll have your confirmation numbers. And basically every single time we submit these forms to the IRS or states, or once we print and mail those recipient copies out, you'll get another email like this, just updating you on the status of your forms. Now, if you're ever wondering, though, what's the status of my forms, you can always come back out here and log in and come to Form Filing History from the Filing Home. Form Filing History is simply a list of all the different forms you filed, and you can start by clicking this little Check Status button, and it will bring up exactly the status of your forms. As you can see, this order has been confirmed, but has not yet been sent to the agency. Again, these are not going to start moving forward very quickly because we are in our test environment. I don't want these to live files since this is dummy data. In your environment, this should not be here, and these will start moving forward as we send them to the IRS, as we send them to states, and as we print and mail the copies out to the recipients. Now, if you have a 1099 vendor or owner who has lost their form, you can come out here to the printer icon, leave that person's name checked, click next, and get the replacement copy for the recipient's records. You can also print or save copies for yourself as well. Click download. And just like that, you have a form that you can print out and provide to your 1099 vendor for them easily replacement copy. However, if they really need a replacement copy, the other thing you can do is come out to this little envelope icon and see where the electronic email went with the link to their 1099 went. If there's no email address here, you can add one in and then click send email. And what this will do is it'll generate a new email to the email address you put in there, where they can go out, click a link, put in the last 4 digits of their tax ID number, and download that form electronically. It's a little bit easier, a little bit simpler way of sending them a reprint copy of their 1099. Gets things done a little bit quicker, and again, gives you the ability to go completely paperless. Finally, I won't walk through the process in the name of time, but there is a little pencil icon here. This pencil icon is where you go to make corrections. If a 1099 recipient says that there is an error and you need to make a correction, go ahead and click on that little pencil icon. We'll walk you through every single step of the way how to file 1099 corrections. Makes it super easy on your guys' end. And again, you'll have the same options to print and mail that copy to the recipient and also electronically file the correction to the IRS. So with that, that about concludes my slides. And so I want to go ahead and field any questions. We have a few minutes here that we can go through questions. So go ahead and get any questions into that Q&A panel of the webinar tool, and we will be happy to do our best to answer them. Like I said, Catherine is here to answer any Rentec specific questions. I'm here to answer any general 1099 questions or anything specific about Nelco system. And so go ahead and get those questions in, and we'll do our best to get them answered. One thing I will say, one question that a lot of people have frequently is, when do you have to have all of the 1099s to Nelco to get them filed? And the answer is 8 p.m. on January 31st. I'm sorry, 8 p.m. Eastern time on January 31st. As long as you get that checkout screen, that congratulations screen by 8 p.m. Eastern time on January 31st, we will go ahead and get those forms printed and mailed to the recipients and e-filed to the IRS. We try to stay open as late as we can, so there is a surcharge on the last couple of days prior to that, so I don't recommend waiting until the last minute. However, if you find yourself in a pinch, you can go ahead and file up until 8 p.m. Eastern time on January 31st, the deadline. All right, let's go ahead and go through some questions here. Do you have to do all of your 1099s at the same time, or can you do it one or two at a time if we need to collect additional information from them? Feel free to do it one or two at a time. Not a problem at all. You guys can transmit over as many times as you want. You can break those up. Don't need to do specifically them all together at the same time. How do you submit 1099s for tax year 22 from Rentec and Nelco? I'm not 100% sure. Catherine, you might be able to jump in. Our system is still filing 2022 tax forms for like another week or two. So if you are sitting here right now and you realize, oh shoot, I still have 1099s to do from 2022, I would say get those done as quickly as possible via the process that I just went through, and we will get them done. But again, I think you only have another week or two before we start changing over to 2023 filing. So if you have any left to do, get them done soon. If it comes after that point, give Nelco a call. We can probably see if we can help you at all with prior year, but definitely get those done as soon as possible. It's going to be the easiest way.
Yes, and just remember to check your numbers before submission, because what you're going to see on that 1099 screen in Rentec would be for 2023. So you'd have to pull the appropriate report for 2022. Any questions, though, of course, contact our support team. We'll walk you through on this side as well.
So a question came in: housing authorities and voucher programs issue their own 1099s to my clients. How would I correct the 1099 amount prior to being issued, since it would be based on the total rents received? Catherine, can you jump in specifically on this one? I don't know if there's a way for them to make any adjustments inside of Rentec.
Yeah, we had this question before, actually just recently, and it's you would just make those corrections in Rentec, and when you go to the Utilities tab to get ready for submission, you can actually correct those numbers prior to submission. So you definitely would need to know your rent gross that you collected versus what the Housing Authority collected. So make sure to adjust those numbers prior to submission.
Thank you. Question, can we get a copy of this presentation? Absolutely. We will have a recording available as well as the slide deck. Not a problem at all.
And we're also going to include it in our knowledge base here at Rentec Direct, and keep an eye out for our blog because we always include it on a blog article after this webinar.
Question, if we have to add an email address to a 1099 recipient, does that information get entered into Rentec automatically? Excellent question. And no, it does not. If you add one in on the Nelco system, you will need to go back and manually add it into the Rentec system. So no, that information does not write back to Rentec. I do have one question is, if we want to check to make sure we are issuing 1099s for everyone that should receive one, do you offer resources for us to look at to confirm this? That is more of a Rentec function than a Nelco function. But let me go back here to Rentec. Oops,
Yeah, yeah, and I want to make
sorry,
sure I'm
but
going to help you out here just a bit
please.
because in Rentec we also under the reports tab and under financial reports we have a 1099 tax assistant report that you can review prior to even going to the utilities for submission. So make sure to have all your ducks in a row for your vendors as well as for your owners, and then that's a good time to check, your addresses and that you have the right EIN numbers in there, and any corrections would be made prior to even getting to this piece. Okay.
I just went there. That tax
Thank you.
assistant is up here. Yeah. And one quick note, $600 is that threshold for payments. Anything over $600 in the calendar year, you need to make sure that you are filing 1099 for. If you can keep it to $599, you do not have to file the 1099. So, all right. To verify Nelco eFiles to the states that require it. Also, a couple of years ago, I used Nelco and was forced to eFile the state filing. Not 100% sure, but yes, we will file to any of the states that require filing. So we can take care of that. You should not have to go directly to the states or have any issues there. We can go ahead and we will take care of that. So. All right, getting a lot of questions in here, and so I'm going to do my best to answer as many as we can. But I also know that time is getting short here, so I'm doing my best to get you guys out of here. Where under Rentec settings do you find 1099 eFile again, please? Yeah, that's a good question. So if you go over here to settings, and then come down to utilities, and then 1099 eFile and print. That is how you get the information over to Nelco by clicking on the 1099 eFile and print. That's how you start that up. Is there a pricing chart enabling us to get a guesstimate of e-filing charges if using Nelco and Rentec? Yeah, great question. And yes, you can come out here to more info and costs. And here is the pricing for those. Scroll down a little bit. This is the 2022 pricing. There's also 2023 pricing available right here. As I mentioned before, probably the easiest thing to do is come January, just go ahead and submit those forms over to Nelco, set up an account, and you'll be able to see exactly. But if you want to do a little bit of math, you can see the range of how many forms you're filing, what services you need to file, and just do the math right there on the multiplication. For the rent used in 1099, is it directly pulled from Rentec or do we need to manually fill it in? It is directly pulled from Rentec. The process I just went through, the biggest advantage of it is that if you take your forms directly to a CPA, your accountant to have them file the 1099s, they're basically taking the numbers that you give them and file those 1099s themselves. They're using a program that's probably similar to Nelco system, but basically they're not doing any real calculations, because they don't know how much rent you pay or how much rent was paid out. They don't know how much you paid these individual vendors. They're just taking the information that you give to them, and then they're plugging and slugging it, and they're good to go. You already have that information in Rentec, and as you kind of alluded to, that information pulls right out of Rentec and into the Nelco system, so you don't have to do any manual work to do that. Can we create some vendors in Nelco, or do they all have to be imported from Rentec? They do need to come over from the Rentec system. As I mentioned before, Nelco relies on Rentec to store those vendors' information and um, and send it over to the Nelco system to report it. So you do need to make sure that the information is proper in Rentec prior to submitting to Nelco. All right. I have more than one LLC. How do I switch for each one? I'm going to let Catherine handle any information in Rentec, but in the Nelco system, you can file for as many different LLCs or as many different companies as you want under the same login. The only thing that kind of regulates or governs your login information is that email address and password. So if you use the same email address and password, you can file for as many different companies as you need to, um, inside of the Nelco system. Inside of Rentec, I don't know, Catherine, if you want to speak to that at all in terms of ability to navigate between two couple different companies inside of Rentec.
Yes, if you're managing for more than one LLC or you have to file under different EINs, there is a way to change that information prior to submission to Nelco, and it works great. But I prefer just like give us a call so we can walk you through the steps to avoid any time spent here. But we actually do have an option that you can use.
Thank you. All right, we'll go through one last question, then we'll wrap up. Apologize if we didn't get all your questions answered, but doing our best we can inside of the time limit here. Um, does the e-filing fulfill the 10 plus rule by the IRS for bulk filing? And the answer is yes. Our e-filing, we work with the IRS, make sure that our systems are going to work with the IRS and make sure that they're going to meet all of the requirements. So if you are more than 10, you will be compliant with the IRS if you use Nelco system. If you are less than 10, you will still also be compliant with the IRS, because the IRS loves it when you e-file, even if you don't have to. But yes, our system will meet all of the IRS requirements, and you will be compliant if you use our system to file to the IRS. All right, with that, I am going to go ahead and wrap up. Catherine, do you have anything to add or any other questions you want to slide in there?
Oh, sure. Actually, I thought that webinar was really great, and I do appreciate you going to the edit screen also where people can amend, because that was one of the questions we get often. And then anything that has to do with Rentec specific, just reach out to us directly here at Rentec, whether phone, email, or chat, because we're here to help. I think it's super easy. Once you do it one year, I don't usually have a lot of questions the next following year because it's super simple. Me and Jason's worked together a long time, and it works great.
All right. Yeah, we love working with Rentec. We have seen just absolutely exponential growth from Rentec users as they've realized how easy the system is, and we quite frankly just love working with you guys, and we love working with Rentec. I can't stress again just how great of a software partner you guys have chosen in them, and so I really appreciate them giving the opportunity for me to come here and talk through our system, and I really appreciate you guys joining us today. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up and just say thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us. I hope you guys have a very happy holiday season coming up, and let us know what we can do to help you to make your January the easiest it's ever been. Take care, everybody.